the previous video, we looked at checking the phase relationship between each of the different drum mics to ensure that our recorded drums are sounding as best as they can be. But now it's time to take things up another notch and incorporate the technique which is known as drum replacement. You're probably sitting back at home listening to one of your favorite albums thinking, how does that engineer achieve that signature drum sound they're most famous for? Well, drum replacement is the technique that they use. So basically what drum replacement involves, it involves the concept of layering drum samples underneath your recorded drums, most commonly the kick and the snare. So for example, you could be listening to your snare track thinking, yeah, it's got a lot of weight to it, but we just want that top end crack so it will just cut through the mix a lot more. You try to EQ it, compress it, saturate it, but that still won't cut it. So this is where drum replacement comes into it. So it's more or less just taking the time to scroll through your drum library, finding a snare sample that has that top end crack you're looking for. Once you've found it, then you can layer it with your recorded snare, and bingo, we've got a snare sound that's going to cut through the mix a lot more. Same deal with the kick as well. If your kick is lacking that low end weight, then go through your sample library, find a kick sample that's got that low end weight, layer it with your recorded kick, and bingo, we now have a kick and a snare that sound awesome. Now, there's many different drum replacement VST plugins on the market these days, such as Slate and Drumagog, which is another one that's used widely in the industry. But in this session, we're going to be using Logic Pro. And luckily, Logic Pro actually has its own drum replacement engine built into it. So this is what we'll be using to show you some really cool examples of how drum replacement can really dramatically enhance your drum sound. So what I've done, I've checked all the phase relationship between each of the drums and everything's all good. And also did just a bit of light EQing as well, just to clean some of the sounds up and allow space for things to cut through a bit more, and then a bit of a balance after that. But apart from that, everything is raw as you hear it. So let's just have a listen to the drums on their own. So yeah, they're sounding pretty cool. They're sounding pretty punchy. They've got that impact. The snare's got a nice crack to it. Overall, quite a nice tight sound. And again, just going back to what we discussed in the previous video, that's why it's very crucial to check the phase relationship before you do anything else with the drums, just to ensure we can get the recorded drums sounding as best as they can be. Now, let's have a listen to it in context with the rest of the instrumentation. So yeah, sounding pretty cool, sounding pretty tight, but there's still something lacking with the kick and the snare. We just need a bit more impact, a bit more snap, so they just cut through the mix that little bit more. So this is where we can go to our drum replacement engine. Okay, so next step is we're going to start on our kick. So if we click on our kick track on the top, and on Mac, if we just hit Control D on our keyboard, you can see it's brought up the drum replacement engine. Now, first things first, since we're working with a kick drum, if we go to Instrument, just click on the drop down menu and select Kick. So now we're going to be getting a kick sample layered underneath our recorded kick. Now the mode you choose is up to you. If you choose the replacement mode, what that's going to do, that's going to mute your recorded kick sound and then just replace it with just a sample. If you accidentally click that, don't fret. You can always unmute your recorded drum sample and you'll have the best of both worlds there. Whereas we're just going to stick with the doubling mode because that will just layer the sample underneath the pre-recorded drum without muting anything. So we've got kick and then we've got doubling. So if we hit OK, you will notice under my original recorded kick, it's created a MIDI instrument track. So basically what it's done, it's chosen a kick sample in the form of a MIDI track, no different to if we're writing a track in MIDI such as programming synths or drum beats, and it has layered it exactly underneath my recorded kick. So if we just zoom in, my MIDI notes are lining up exactly to what the transients on our recorded kick track are. And if we just double click on the MIDI track, you can see how the velocities are not the same. So basically what it's done, it's modeled the attack and the velocity on the original performance of the recorded kick sound. So this can have an advantage if you're wanting to go for more of that organic kind of vibe with your track and wanting it to blend a bit more. But when we listen to a lot of contemporary stuff that's produced nowadays, the drums are basically just hitting it sounding as though they're just hitting at one velocity. So for this purpose, I'm just going to select all of these and just bring up the velocity a lot more. So we've got a harder attack on our kick sample. And also, when it's created a kick sample underneath, it's also brought up in my library a whole bunch of different kick samples to choose from. So you can basically just solo the kick sample. Let's just have a listen to that. So yeah, it sounded pretty cool. It's got that nice click on the top end as well as that nice weightiness to it. So the moment of truth, if we solo our drums, let's have a listen to the kick to see how it melds with the rest of the kit. Now the difference is night and day. Already you can hear the kick's got a lot more impact, a lot more drive, and it's sounding a lot more consistent now. So if I just mute the sample, let's just have a listen to the original recordings. And put the sample back in. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to mute our recorded kick and just have the sample. So let's just see what the sample sounds like. Now, it depends on how your drums are originally recorded. Sometimes if they're not recorded that well, then that's the resort that you'd go through. You'd replace the original drums with samples only. Whereas in this case, we want to blend both the recorded sounds and the sample. But you can kind of see how the recorded drums give more of that kind of ambience and that organicness, and the samples just augment that even more by adding even more of that punch. So you can see how both of them sort of work together and how we need both of them as well. So it's a question of just blending in a bit. So let's just have a listen again. So just brought the kick sample down just a tiny bit, but I'm really liking that impact that it's adding to it. So let's have a listen to it in context with the track. Pretty cool. So already that's given it a lot more impact and a lot more drive. And that's just a kick sample alone. And if you really wanted to kind of step things up, you could even layer another kick sample underneath that. But we'll get to the fun stuff after. So now that we're happy with that sample with the kick, let's go to our snare. So the same deal with the snare. We'll just choose our first snare track, hit Control D, and bingo, we have our drum replacement engine. Obviously we're not going to have a kick, so let's choose snare. We'll stick to doubling again. Once that's done, hit OK. And bingo. Same deal with the snare as with the kick. You can see a MIDI track there has punched in the MIDI notes that line up exactly as the transients are on our recorded snare. So we just double click. Again, the velocities are quite light, I guess, because of the performance of that. So it's matching that. But again, we're wanting to go for a bit more consistency with that. So just select all of that and pump up the velocity. So now that's done, let's just solo our drums. Since our samples are not part of a drum group at this stage, have to solo those, and we'll do the kick. So let's have a listen to the drums now. Oh man, that's grooving. Yeah. So again, it's the difference between night and day. Just adding those samples underneath is enough just to augment the drums and just elevate them. So when you're listening to your favorite album and you're thinking, man, how does the engineer get that signature drum sound? Then drum replacement is the samples they use to create that and to get the drums just sounding, awesome and large. So let's just mute the snare. Let's just have a listen to that without the sample. Sounds alright, but we just need that extra pizzazz. So sample back in. Yeah, really cool. And let's just hear how it fits in with the rest of the track. Yeah, cool. And again, just do a bit of a balance. So I might just bring that sample down just ever so slightly. Let's just mute the sample and just hear the snare in the track without the sample. We're already craving for that impact. So sample back in. Cool, so another test, just mute our recorded snares and let's just have the sample playing. So again, if our snare recording didn't come out that well, or perhaps the snare's not tuned properly, so you're just getting all that ugly resonance, why spend 20 hours of your life trying to EQ and compress the hell out of your recorded snare when we can just sample, replace it, get rid of what we don't want, and bang, we've got a nice clean snare. Another cool thing in a drum recording session to do is, before the drummer arrives, just take a one shot of every drum, so a one shot sample of your snare, of your kick, toms, because that can be really cool, because that will also maintain the sound of the kit that's been recorded, but again, just augment it so you can save those one shots you've recorded as samples and then layer them in underneath as well when it comes to your editing and mixing sessions. So there's a lot of options to play with there. Now we can have a bit of fun as well. So let's say we want to go for a different vibe with our snare sound. We've got plenty of acoustic snares here, but Logic also has its own drums as well. So if we just go drums and percussion, so let's see what an 808 sounds like in this. Pretty interesting. Now let's go back to our kick and choose an electronic kick. So yeah, we may as well just go with a 808 kick as we're using an 808 snare. Let's see how this transforms the track. Yeah, so it's kind of given more of an electronic-y sort of vibe to it, and just goes to show how drums can actually really impact the sound of our track. It's amazing, like a different drum sound can make a track sound completely different as well. There's some more options as well. So it's kind of got more sort of a roomy sort of sound to it. And let's go back to our snare and go back to a more traditional sounding snare. That's kind of cool. Let's see how that sounds. So we kind of gone more for an organic-y sort of sound. So this is the most common way to determine the right drum sound for your track. And yeah, just have fun and experiment with it. So if we're wanting to go something a bit more kind of, I guess, that Brit sort of sound as well, we can choose our Liverpool kit. And same thing with our snare sample as well. Let's click on our snare sample. Choose the Liverpool kit. So it's kind of got that very sort of Brit poppy indie kind of vibe. Let's see how that goes. So there you go. That's just a few examples on, choosing the drum sound for your track and how each different drum sound can change the track. Like, for example, that Liverpool style drum kit has more of that sort of British indie pop kind of character to it, which has kind of made the track a bit more sort of laid back and relaxed compared to some of the others as well. So just goes to show there's just so many options when it comes to drum replacement. And this is definitely the secret weapon of how the top engineers achieve those drum sounds in all of the recordings that you hear today. So sit back, have fun with it, just experiment. And if there's anything you want re-clarifying or explaining, just hit us up. And also, visit the Diamonds Audio website and the link below if you would like any more information, or perhaps you would like some audio production lessons on certain elements. So happy producing, everybody, and peace out.